the books of the Natsarim and the Enlightened Ones. Restored Names Edition. Foreword. The Book of the Natsarim, commonly translated as Nazarene or Nazarene, and the Book of Yachanan John, the Enlightened of Elohim, were included together in a text known as the Gospel of the Chaldee, meaning wise strangers. The origins of this work are debated, as no original manuscripts have ever been found. However, it is commonly believed that the books were preserved and passed down by Celtic believers in the 1500s after previously being saved from arson, possibly either the burning of the Library of Alexandria or the Glastonbury Abbey fire in 1184. It has been tucked away alongside a secular work known as the Qur'an. However, they don't remotely share any similarities. It is more likely that they were both passed down through the same or a similar group of people and timeline. Whether this is a complete and divinely inspired text can certainly be debated. Nevertheless, we do believe that it contains words from our Messiah that were not all captured in the canonical gospel accounts. As stated by the Apostle Yachanan, if everything the Messiah did were recorded, all of the books in the world could not contain them. John 21 verse 25. In this volume, you will find astonishing parables new and old, the new bringing deeper convictions and a sincere desire to look within oneself, and the old being expounded upon greatly. The timing of these books beginning to circulate is encouraging, as more and more believers are waking up to the true gospel, salvation in Messiah alone, and the importance of keeping the Torah of the Most High, a concept confirmed again and again in this text. Certain scriptures, such as Matthew 5 verses 17 to 19, are clarified to mean exactly what the Ruach HaKodesh, Holy Spirit, has already been revealing to many of us, that the Torah is still for us today. I have not come to abolish the Torah or to change the teachings of the prophets, but to complete them, adding any necessary clarification and interpreting them to the understanding of men. But the time has come to ask, when will they be put into practice? When will men bring Yahuwah, the Most High, out of the temple and make him a participant in their daily lives? When will men carry these things in their hearts and stop paying them lip service? I say with certainty, so long as earth and the heavens above it remain, not even the smallest particle shall be deducted from the Torah until the purpose it serves has been completed. Therefore, if anyone try to avoid even the least obligation imposed by the Torah, or to set aside the slightest of its restrictions, or teach others to do the same, he will be an insignificant thing in the life to come. But whoever lives by them, leading others to do likewise, will achieve the greatest heights of glory. Book of the Natsarim 9 verses 41 to 42. Please note this text has been revised to restore the sacred names of the Most High and His Son, as well as the original names of people and places. It is also separated into 2 separate books, which were formerly compiled together under the title, The Gospel of the Chaldee. Chapter and verse numbers have also been added for ease of reference. It is also important to mention that it was reported among early assembly writers and historians that scriptures were already being tampered with. Justin Martyr testifies to this and cites a couple examples in his book, Dialogue with Trypho. Irenaeus also talks about it in his work Demonstration of Apostolic Preaching. Upon examining this document, we encountered a few out-of-place passages that opposed the rest of the text. In chapter 19, we have included brackets and italicized the portion we found to be potentially added, altered, or the true meaning lost in translation. If you would like to read the original for yourself, Check the link on the description box below. Some disciples came to Yahusha and asked whether they should not withdraw into the wilderness, where they would dedicate their lives to Yahuwah. Yahusha said, "Of what use would my teachings be in the wilderness? Are you going to save rocks from sin or convert camels? Will you enlighten the wind or give wisdom to mirages? Where is the benefit if what you learn cannot be put into practice?" Learning and good conduct must go hand in hand, and the greatest wisdom is that which teaches men to live in harmony. They who seek to escape the tests and trials of life are cowards. Are you going to withdraw from the conflict through lack of courage, standing silently by while the wicked swallow up the good? Books of the Natsarim 4 verses 41 and 42. It is time to step out in faith and be the light He has called us to be. May this be a blessing to you and your family, and may the Ruach of truth guide you in all things.
Chapter 1. The birth of Yahusha the Nazarite, who became our master and interpreter of Elohim and the Torah, a worthy vessel for the greatest manifestation of the power of the Ruach HaKodesh seen on earth, occurred in this manner. About the time Yachanan the forerunner commenced teaching the way of the wilderness beside Yarden, in the year before Herod died, when Augustus Caesar ruled the Roman world, a babe was born. The father was Yosef, son of Heli, a carpenter of Galilee, and the mother Miriam his wife, who had been a virgin pledged to Yahuwah and the temple by her father Shimon, son of Joachim, son of Nathan, son of Eleazar. A decree had gone out that all who claimed kinship within the house of David should be gathered for enrollment at the city of David, called Bethlehem in Galilee. Therefore Yosef, being rightfully born into the stock of David, took the scroll of his parentage and went to Bethlehem so his kinship could be established. Now Miriam, being then heavy with child, longed in her heart to be among her kinsmen, and she prevailed upon Yosef to take her, for Bethlehem was only a day's journey from them. The two, with a servant, came to Bethlehem at eventide, but because so many had gathered, the inns were filled. Then as Miriam's time was close upon her after the journey, a man took pity on her and provided a cave used as a stable. There the travelers found shelter and rest. That night Miriam's labors came upon her, and she suffered the pangs of childbirth and cried out in pain. Nearby, some shepherds were tending sheep, for in the midst of so many strangers these needed protection, and hearing her cry went to help. They provided a shepherd's basket which was filled with straw and placed it in the manger, and the newborn babe was wrapped in the clothes brought for him. After 8 days had elapsed, the child was named Yeshua, meaning one who delivers, for an angel of Yahuwah had appeared to Yosef in a dream, saying, "That which lies within Miriam your wife is filled with the power of the Ruach HaKodesh and will respond to the hopes of men." Later men called him Yahusha, and because he fulfilled their hopes and was anointed with the power of the Ruach HaKodesh, he became acknowledged as the Messiah. Now the stable was against a hill, behind an inn where sages from the east were staying, men of Sestera, wise in the books of heaven, and of Nimrod, who carried the cross of fire. So Yosef sent for them, requesting they come and foretell the child's future, for such was the custom. One of the sages said, "It is strange indeed, for this child is born under no usual star, but under one that is a star in appearance only and not in nature, having a power not in other stars. He is destined for greatness and will motivate events touching the lives of all men." When word of this was passed around, there was much excitement among those belonging to the house of David. And many, remembering the prophecies of Yachanan, for they had passed his way, wondered in their hearts, Is this not he for whom we wait? The consolation of the Yahudim and deliverer of men? This displeased the people of Bethlehem, who awaited another deliverer. When the sages spoke of the matter at their journey's end in Jerusalem, and word came of the excitement among those of the house of David in Bethlehem, there was great consternation among the priests and learned men. They tried to discover where the babe was, but the sages answered deviously and said, "His star points towards the east." An elder of the house of David, attending the blessing of the child on the 8th day, lifted up his voice and declared, "Surely this is he who has been promised to redeem us out of the hands of evil. This is he upon whom the power of the Ruach HaKodesh will descend, bestowing strength, compassion and wisdom. Surely he will rule in the kingdom of Elohim." When the king heard about these things and that a babe had been born who, many claimed, was destined to be the deliverer, he was greatly disturbed and summoned the council. With the council were learned scribes and elders who disputed among themselves concerning the babe. Some said that while Yahuwah's anointed would be born in Bethlehem, the deliverer would not, for the birth of Yahuwah's anointed in that place had been foretold by the prophets. Others said it might not be more than an enlightener who was expected to be born at that time. However, when many agreed that Yahuwah's anointed and the deliverer might be the same person, the king sent 3 men to discover the child. The dispute before the council had been long, and Yosef had been forewarned, so when the men sent by Herod came to Bethlehem, Yosef had departed with his family. They went to the place where the kinsman of Miriam lived. The men who came did not search long for Yahusha, for after the council had been dismissed, Herod slew the son who sat with him on the throne, as he had slain others of his blood. Later Herod died himself, but after these happenings, the Romans did not bestow the title of king on any Yehudi, and it was unlawful for any man to claim the title. In this manner the prophecy was fulfilled which said, "A virgin shall give birth to a son, naming him Elohim with us. He will be the bearer of knowledge, discriminating between good and evil. But before this is given to the people, the land will lose its kings." When time had passed, Yosef and Miriam came to Jerusalem and stayed at the house of a relative, a man strongly set against wrongdoing and well learned in the Torah. The 40 days having been accomplished for the purification of Miriam, she came to the temple, and Yosef offered the prescribed sacrifice and dedicated the child. Hearing from Yosef and Miriam the things which the sages had foretold about the child Yahusha, the devout man took the babe into his arms and praised Yahuwah in this manner. "Because the things foretold have come about, your servant is prepared to depart in peace. For my eyes have been gladdened by the deliverer of my people, a beacon light for others and the glorifier of your name. He will teach all men the ways of Yahuwah and how to walk in his paths. So swords shall be made into plowshares and spears into billhooks, and peace will reign over men." Yosef and Miriam could not understand the meaning of this and asked what was meant, whereupon the man replied, "I hold a sapling which will grow into a sturdy tree, under the shade of which many nations will find peace. Yet he will also test the strength of our people, tearing them apart in dispute. He comes as a separator, dividing the sheep from the goats, showing each his rightful place. He will place a sword in the hands of the weak and strengthen them, and the ungodly will be smitten." After complying with the requirements of the priestly law, Yosef and Miriam returned with the infant to their home in Galilee, a small place in a hollow at the foot of a hillside. There the child grew up, developing a strong body and keen mind, for he was strangely talented. He was wise beyond his years and deft with his hands, and when old enough he began learning the craft of plow-making. His parents, following the custom, went each year to Jerusalem for the festival of deliverance. And when Yahusha was 12, they went as usual, but this time taking him with them. Having remained the 7 days of the festival, Yosef and Miriam set off to return home, but let the boy linger in Jerusalem, for a kinsman of theirs was also returning, and they thought Yahusha was in his company. Having gone a day's journey and finding Yahusha was not with his kinsman, they became perturbed and at first light in the morning returned to Jerusalem. It was some time before they found Yahusha in a small outside room of the temple, sitting before an instructor of the priestly law. His parents were astonished at finding him accepted among learned men, and the teacher expressed amazement at the child's love of learning. But Miriam scolded the boy for his inconsideration, saying, "We have suffered much during the search for you." Yahusha replied, "Why search for me elsewhere, knowing I must concern myself with the work of my Father?" This saying disturbed the instructor. Neither could his parents understand the meaning of the reply, but they took the boy away with them. Henceforth he always obeyed his parents, but Miriam kept these things in the storehouse of her heart. As Yahusha grew up, his intelligence increased and he was well liked by all, but he was solitary child much given to wandering. Chapter 2. Yosef died when Yahusha was a youth, at that time working as a craftsman among the Kenite. After Yahusha had been away a long time, he returned to the house of his brothers. One day while he worked under the shade of a tree, they came to him and said, "Out in the wilderness by Yarden there is a man who cleanses people by immersion in water. He claims strange knowledge and calls himself the forerunner. We are going to see what he teaches." Yahusha said, "I have heard of these things, and surely as the son of our forefather Ishai prayed to be cleansed of his secret faults and presumptions, the sons of our father should not stand aloof from cleansing. I will go with you." The brothers of Yahusha said, "This man is called Yachanan. He heralds the coming of an enlightener who will be an all-wise instructor in goodness. He himself does not bear this new light which will dispel the darkness in men's minds. He tells of one who will grant men the privilege of becoming children of Elohim, awakening to eternal life that part within them not born of earthly desires." So Yahusha and his brothers went out seeking Yachanan, finding him beside the Yarden, at the place of crossing where there was a pool. The hairs on the head of Yachanan were already white. Yachanan, seeing Yahusha among those gathered about him, said, "Look all of you, here he is, a man in whom there is no guile, the true Lamb of Elohim, the one we await. For Sethel, sending me forth to baptize, instructed me thus: when you discover a man worthy to be the receptacle of the Ruach HaKodesh in abundance, the same shall you acknowledge as the Enlightener." Hearing these words, Yahusha joined with those to be cleansed. But when he stood before the forerunner in the water, Yachanan said, "You have greater powers of cleansing than I, yet you come to me." Yahusha replied, "The power to cleanse and revitalize with the Ruach is not in men but in the Ruach which fills man. It is important each should be allowed to do whatever he is called upon to do." Yahusha asked of Yachanan, "What do you know about me?" Yachanan said, "Years gone by, I had a vision of 3 heavenly lights, and as the sun sank so they rose. A flame of fire went up over Jerusalem, and smoke filled the temple, and a star fell down into Yehuda. The meaning I know, for it was this: the deliverer is born, and woe unto the house of Herod. Woe to you scribes and your interpretations of the Torah." The star that appeared and stood over Jerusalem was a child planted into Bethlehem from out of the heavenly heights, as was foretold, and it was prophesied he would be the deliverer. The fire that burned was the fire of a strange altar. "I prophesy great things for you. You are the true Son of Elohim. Soon you will see the glory of heaven revealed, and the power of the Ruach HaKodesh will be poured out upon you as a stream of pure water. The time has come to proclaim yourself. No man is hated so much as one who tries to point out defects in character and attitudes and seeks to guide men along the path of right and beneficial living. Then Yachanan took Yahusha down to the river and baptized him, and he was overshadowed by the Ruach HaKodesh and became fully filled with its power, so his face glowed. And the people wondered and were bewildered, for they did not understand. Yet the face of their forefather Moshe had also glowed after he had been in the presence of the Ruach HaKodesh of Yahuwah. Yachanan said, "Go and wait upon the mountainside nearby." Later, Yachanan went to join Yahusha and told him that he was the Anointed One but should not yet make this known to the people. Then Yachanan prayed thus, "We give thanks, O Yahuwah, with souls purified through realization of our misdeeds, and Ruachath reaching upward to commune with you. It is by your power alone we have seen the light of truth manifested and come to know the secret of your hidden name. In humility we call you by the name of Father because you have shown us a Father's compassion and kindness, and because we know you chastise and discipline us after the manner of a father. You have granted us freedom of activity, that we may enjoy the blessings of life. We have been saved by the waters of your affection. We approach you as the only good and great being, asking only that we be united with you in the waters of the Ruach and never become separated from the source of life." This is how Yachanan testified concerning these events. On that day the Ruach outflowing from Elohim came with a great surge of power. I did not know this man from others, but seeing him I recalled what I had been told by those who gave me power to cleanse with water. They had said, "When you find someone so filled with the power of the Ruach HaKodesh he can hardly contain it, you will know him for one who will baptize with the cleansing power of the Ruach HaKodesh." I have experienced this power and testify that this man is the true Son of Elohim, the Enlightener and Deliverer. Yachanan left Yahusha on the mountainside, where he stayed 3 days fasting and communicating with the powers above. Then he went back to the riverside. Yachanan was standing with 2 of his disciples, Yahusha sitting apart, and Yachanan said to those with him, "There is the one giving himself as an offering of Elohim, the Enlightener of the world and the Deliverer of our people." Then the 2 disciples went to Yahusha and said, "Tell us about your teachings. Shall we follow your way or that of Yachanan?" Yahusha said, "There is the way of the wilderness and there is my way, alike in teaching but calling to different men. What Yachanan teaches accords with the Torah even as my teaching. Obey either or both, they are the Torah." From that day forth, Yahusha had power to heal the sick and to do many things, but he went out into the wilderness bordering Yarden, uncertain about his next move. While there, hungry and thirsty, he fought with the flesh, resisting the temptation to go down among the habitations of men and use his powers for selfish ends. The same Ruach of Yahuwah which overshadowed Yahusha overshadowed the creation. It enlightens outer darkness and bestows life and is eternal. Yachanan was one of those who can see the Ruachath of men, and so he knew the nature of Yahusha. These things took place at Betharaba, which means the place of crossing. Chapter 3. Coming from the wilderness, Yahusha still retained the full power of the Ruach HaKodesh. Having it on trusteeship from Elohim, he would not use it unworthily. At night it shone around him like a pale blue haze. And though many have it, never has another manifested it in such strength. 2 followers of Yachanan the forerunner, one being Andrew the brother of Shimon, were sent by him to be with Yahusha and accompanied him to the Galilean Sea of the Gentiles. Early in the morning Andrew sought out his brother and said, "We have found the deliverer," but at the time Shimon thought another was meant. When Yahusha had known Shimon for 2 days he said, You are strong, silent and steady, one likely to be ever steadfast in conflict. Therefore you shall be called Kepha, this meaning the rock, in the tongue of the Gentiles. And from that day Kepha became a follower of Yahusha. Passing along the shore, they came upon the tower of fishermen, and a boat was being unloaded by its owners. One who accompanied Yahusha said, "Those are good men known to me." Then Yahusha spoke to them while sharing a meal and later said, "Fishing is a good life, but there is a better one. Follow me and you will become fishers of men." So, placing their boat in the keeping of others, they followed Yahusha. At this time, Yahusha spoke with caution, for the people still recalled Yehuda the Galilean who had smitten the Romans in battle. Yahusha was a man of long silences, and many thought him strange. But he taught all along the shore of the Galilean Sea and called others to follow him. They worked wherever they could, for Yahusha said, "What we offer is not to be sold like a common chattel, and we will not take anything without giving value in return." He healed many, saying, "It is not I but the power from above with me." Some of the disciples said, "It is truly he who heals." But he did not cure all, for in some it created a disturbance, while many were not cured because this would have done them more harm than good. When asked, "How do you heal?" Yahusha replied, "By the finger of Elohim." This is what the prophets had said regarding these things. These are the words of Yahuwah, "I will restore you to health and heal your wounds. Be strong of heart and courageous, neither afraid nor dismayed. For I am with you always." About this time the disciples questioned Yahusha concerning the world of Ruachath wherein lay the kingdom of heaven, and he said, "It is like a flight of stairs leading from cellar to roof. They who enter the house are given a place on the stairs and may step downwards and back, but never up, though the stair above is not unknown to them. Those on the top stair are in glorious sunshine, while those at the bottom are in darkness and gloom." A disciple said, "Many who do not come mock your words." Yahusha replied, "Dogs bite stones, not those who throw them." Someone asked, "Are you the hammer of Elohim?" For all yearn for Elohim's intervention, and when that comes will rejoice, saying, "This is the day of Yahuwah for which we have long waited." Yahusha answered, "There is a time for sowing and a time for reaping, everything to its appointed time." Yahusha gathered his followers around him and taught as follows, "These days are a night of ignorance when all is dark, but I am the light which will dispel the darkness. My light will light your lamps, and you too will become bearers of the light. I am the light to point the way, and none can find the way to Yahuwah except by the light. I come to testify concerning the Father, for those following my way see Elohim in the light of the Father. Does not a father chastise and love and punish with affection? Does he not give you tasks only just within your power of accomplishment? Even as with an earthly father, so with the heavenly Father, who is infinitely greater. Being flesh, we understand earthly ways, but the ways of Yahuwah may also be known and understood, for his Ruach resides in all men. Be upright in faith yourselves and teach uprightness and truth. Fear no man, especially the rich and powerful, for they live in servitude to their possessions and position. You must carry the light to many, but few will be those who light the lamp of their lives from it. Do not covet riches, for though few men possess them, all who do are not free but are themselves possessed by their wealth. Because riches are the possession of a few, all seek them. Even so are my words, were they possessed by all, none would value them. One said to Yahusha, Master, we are not all like Yachanan who could surely eat bread made with sand. Is there no easy way? Yahusha said, The only easy paths in life lead nowhere or are cut by others. But the path I point can be cut by none but yourselves. A peddler going from place to place is willing to undergo the hardships incurred through his wandering, in order to earn his livelihood. Even so should you be prepared to cheerfully accept the hardships imposed by life, in order to gain glory in the life which follows. If a child is not raised with austerity, can it enjoy the pleasures of later life? Only the foolish parent overindulges the child, and if it is done in the name of affection, the parent is either a hypocrite or irresponsible. Now, close by there was a well, and the disciples were drawing water for drinking. Yahusha called them over and said, "Do you find the water refreshing?" They replied, "Yes, we have drunk our fill and are refreshed." Yahusha said, "Does any water remain in the well?" They replied, "Master, this well is inexhaustible and cannot be drunk dry by any number of men." Then Yahusha said, "It is even so with my teachings. What I have revealed so far is but a small portion of the whole, yet it suffices for the present needs. The people among whom we go are perverse and headstrong and like a thirsting ass, can be given only sufficient to ease their pressing need. If they say to you, 'This is beyond our understanding,' or, 'You have told us only in part,' recall this well and the refreshing water you obtained from it." One of the disciples asked, "How shall we judge what people do, whether it be good or whether it be bad?" Yahusha said, "If you are unsure whether a person's actions be good or bad, incline in his favor. If anything may be interpreted favorably or otherwise, then interpret favorably. Do not seek for wrongdoing like dogs chasing a foul smell. If a good man does something appearing to be bad, then withhold judgment, wondering whether there be some good motive behind it. Yet do not be easily hoodwinked. If one with a bad reputation does something seemingly good, but bear in mind that no man is either wholly good or wholly evil." Yahusha said, "Fortify yourselves with the knowledge of truth as I have imparted it to you. Rejoice in the knowledge that you stand within its everlasting light." The disciples said, "Master, we are grateful for what you give us. We know each of us is a part of the everlasting Ruach. We have truly found truth and see it more clearly than others. We are children of the light and of the Ruach, even as we are children of the Father. None of us can ever repay you, for we have been given treasure beyond riches. Only the Heavenly Father can provide proper recompense for your labors among men." At this time, Yahusha was teaching his disciples at a place apart, for he was still wary of the people, but he and the disciples went among them to earn their bread. Yahusha healed many, but to his disciples he said, "I have not come to strengthen the bodies of men but their ruachoth. For if man is wholesome in ruach, he is wholesome in body. It is better to treat the man than the disease." One day a disciple returning from his labor said to Yahusha, "Master, we work all day and scarcely sleep at night, yet when we tell of your teachings we are abused and mocked by the people. Where is the benefit in this? Should we not be treated otherwise?" Yahusha said, "When I was a boy, the poor would gather about my mother's door, for she always had an extra loaf in the oven for them. One day, a beggar, having been fed often and now perhaps considering it his entitlement, found fit to scold her, for this day she was not well and therefore slow. She, not being used to this, began to weep. So I say unto you, do not let the talk of thoughtless tongue perturb you, for this is only a foretaste of what is to come. These things are refining processes of the Ruach, therefore rejoice for the benefit rather than sorrow for the hurt. For when my mother cried, I said to her, dry your eyes and be happy, for now you can perform your charitable acts to perfection. Had those who stood about the door praised you, the deed would have been less worthy, having been done for their praise and therefore not entirely out of charity. Many do good works because it increases their self-esteem, But charity is not giving the bone to a hungry dog but giving the meat when hungry yourself. Andrew said to Yahusha, if we give all we have to the poor, they will grow fat and slothful, preferring a life of beggary to one of toil. Yahusha said, charity is giving a hand to a blind man or soothing the wounds of those smitten by the Ruach strengthening sword of life. It is good to help those in distress or those who cannot help themselves, but sometimes giving does more harm than good. Many give because it eases their conscience or raises their self-esteem. Such giving is not goodness. But when giving entails self-sacrifice, then it is better to give than to receive, for the benefit lies in the sacrifice made and not in the thing bestowed. A rich man was going away, so he gave a purse of silver to each of his 2 servants so they could keep themselves while he was away. One servant spent the money on merchandise which he hawked around the city and, by being thrifty, was able to recover the silver with sufficient over to buy a stall and then a shop. When the master returned, he said to this man, such efforts should not go unrewarded, and made him a gift of the silver. The other servant, having the purse of silver, began to spend it on pleasure and a life of ease, so when the master returned there was nothing left. This angered the master after seeing how hard the other had toiled. So he demanded repayment of the silver and, when this could not be done, enslaved the man. The improvident servant was unable to understand why the other has been given a gift and freedom, while he was enslaved for being unable to repay why he who had money was given more. Yet I say to you, this is the way of the Father who gives trusteeship of earth's bounty to his children. Likewise, they are given talents of spiritual gold which are greater than any earthly silver, but these many choose to bury in the ground. For them the day of accounting must surely come. Yahusha tarried long beside the waters, moving from place to place and teaching his disciples according to their understanding. Some were like strong, well-plastered cisterns holding water without leaking a drop. Others could not retain all that was poured into them. Yahusha taught each only in accordance with his capacity, and some carried much more of his teachings than others. One day at eventide Yahusha said, because you are wearied and your task seems endless, do not despair. What you do may be likened to a man down by the shore whose master has set him the task of carrying water from the sea to fill a hole in the sand. The sea flows no less, neither does the land become flooded. When the master comes, the man says to him, this is a fruitless task to which I can see no end, and the master replies, it is one which grows easier with time, and each day you are paid. Now the thick forest is ignorance, the swamps are delusions, the precipice the carnal desires which lure men to spiritual disaster, and the thorny tickets tribulation and suffering, without which development is impossible. The experienced traveler is a disciple of the light, and the man who reaches the city one who listens to him. The disciples said, Master, many people hear our words, but how many take them to heart and benefit? We are trying to bail out the sea with a shell. Yahusha said, then you are learning patience and persistence in a good school. If a cloak is placed around a shivering man, his body becomes warm and is comforted, but if it is placed around a boulder, there is neither effect nor response. Though I have told you the days fly as though carried on the wings of swallows, do not act as though the day's labor is all important and must be completed within the day. Doing this you become less able to perform the task. For he who tries to reach out over the edge of his limitations falls into a pit and achieves nothing. Jacob, the disciple, said, if a man of unlimited wealth says, come and count silver pieces from sunrise to sunrise, and all the pieces counted will be yours, could the man counting be expected to sleep during the night? Yahusha replied, a man having much wealth is unlikely to do anything without purpose, and this would be in the counting. Could you count silver pieces from sunrise to sunrise and not make an error? Yahusha said, "Let none among you take the handgrips of my plow unless he is prepared to grasp them firmly and cut a deep furrow. Let none of you walk behind it unless prepared for weariness and sweat. There is no easy way for the plowman. The field is there and he must cultivate it furrow by furrow. If he is careless, the grain yield will be poor. Water drawn from the ground or falling from the sky will produce burning weeds and grass, but to produce bread to eat and wine to drink, water from the brows of men must be added. Yet labor is not without its own reward, for the man who labors all day sleeps contentedly even though his pillow be a stone, while the sluggard sleeps without content even though he lie on a pillow of down." Chapter 4. Leaving the Sea of Galilee behind them, Yahusha took the disciples up into the mountains, and others went also. Here there was a house providing warmth and shelter, so they tarried a while, it being the time of preparation for sowing. One cold night, Yahusha went out from the room where they sat at food to relieve a man guarding the asses, so he might come in and warm himself. Later, when the man returned to his charges, he found Yahusha shivering, for he had placed his cloak around a foal. The man said, "Master, why do you do this? But seeing you have done it, why does not our father provide a mantle for his son?" Yahusha said, "The little one is helpless in our hands, but we are not helpless in the Father's hand. The foal has no choice but to remain in the stall, while I can choose to go or stay to keep my covering or give it to another. If Yahuwah avoided the effects of our good deeds, what merit would they have?" The man said, "I will pray Elohim to make me good even as you." Yahusha said, "Pray that your deeds merit the reward of goodness." Another night, a journeyman came seeking shelter and warmth and was given hospitality. He said to those who made him welcome, "You are blessed indeed to live here in warmth and comfort, while I must ride the inhospitable roads for my master." The following morning, having been well provided with sustenance for the road, he said to Yahusha ere he departed, "Master, I listened well to your words last night. Since I am a poor man, suffering many hardships and my life is difficult, am I then assured of better conditions in the life to come?" Yahusha said, "By what standards do you think these things are judged? Using yours, the pack horse accompanying you would be more entitled to this assurance. For while you ate soup and slept in comfort and warmth, this uncomplaining beast whose lot is much harder than yours remained neglected in the cold." Towards the end of their stay, a learned man came to eat with them, one knowing all the books of wisdom and the Torah. While talking with the disciples he said, "Because of my knowledge I am a man of no mean position, and many men are silent before me when weighty matters are under discussion." Yahusha, overhearing this, said, "Take no credit for yourself concerning your knowledge, but compare yourself to a borrower who has a debt to repay. Does the borrower receive credit for repaying what he has borrowed? Therefore take no credit for the wisdom you dispense. And as to the acquisition of knowledge, is this not the end for which you were created?" When this man had departed, Yahusha said to his disciples, "The books of wisdom should be the treasure of all men, for they contain the explanations and instructions of Yahuwah. When men say, 'Woe, because I am smitten with calamity,' why does Elohim let disaster strike in this manner, or why is my lot in life unlike that of others? Be sure they have not unlocked the door of their treasure house." By reading the books of wisdom you will be brought to an understanding of the nature and intention of Elohim, and life will then have meaning and purpose. Without them you can be likened to a man at sea in a fair wind but lacking sail and oars. Reading them, but lacking guidance or understanding, you could be likened to a man at sea with sail and oars, but without the ability to utilize them. A disciple, one who had been with Yachanan, asked, "Master, tell us which is true." Yachanan taught the way of the wilderness and said, "Be the best of men, and let Elohim take care of his kingdom, for you are the rulers of earth. Yet at other times he told us to await the coming of one who would deliver us from the evils of this world and show us the path of righteousness. Yahusha said, "If you knew a distinguished guest was coming, would you not make fitting preparations, doing all things to ensure an appropriate welcome? If a man has many servants, does he thrash his own grain?" The road indicated by Yachanan is not my road, but it leads to the same destination. I bring you the way of the cross, which is the cross of life. Follow what I teach and you will be with me at the end. Choose your path, for no man can plow two furrows, neither can the hands of two men hold the reins. While Yahusha was still in the mountains preparing his disciples for the task ahead, two wandering musicians came by, and one was always laughing and the other always melancholy. Yahusha said to them, "Many men have differing skills, and are you not skilled with the lute and lyre?" They said, "That is so." Yahusha said, "Now when the strings of your instruments are too taut, what happens?" They replied, "Then there is discord." And Yahusha said, "Is it not even so if the strings are too slack?" They replied, "It is." Yahusha said, "Sometimes the natures of men need slackening, for they are too taut, while sometimes they are too slack. Be like your instruments, always tuned to the right note, and let there be harmony between you." One of the disciples said to Yahusha, "Master, you tell us many things and I cannot retain all your words. Surely some are better than others. Which should I store in my heart?" Yahusha said, "A king had 2 castles, one at each end of a wall guarding his kingdom, and he gave each of his 2 sons command over a castle. When word came that an enemy approached, he ordered his sons to collect all kinds of provender and store it. One son collected everything he could, but the other took only what he considered the best, leaving everything else. The enemy came and both castles were besieged. The castle of one son fell when its supplies were exhausted, but the other held out by utilizing what the other had rejected. So it is with my words, even those which may seem of least value may one day prove their worth." The disciple then said, "Tell us where we may find Yahuwah and truth." Yahusha said, "You have the holy books and my words." Turning to the others he said, "This man is like a beggar who all his life stood under a fig tree. More than anything else, he desired to be rich, but he remained always poor and dressed in rags. Like all men, he came to his hour, and those who buried him dug his grave at the place where he had spent his life. When the earth under the tree was opened up, it exposed a treasure of great price. Gold and jewels right under the spot where he had been begging. How easy it would have been for that man to be rich." One of those to whom Yahusha spoke said, "Then all we have to do is to read and listen, assimilating the knowledge gained." Yahusha said, "There is danger even in this. Consider a snake catcher who, going among the rocks, sees a snake well worth catching, but in his haste grabs it by the tail instead of behind the head, so it turns and bites him, causing his death. Did he die because of his calling or because he grabbed the snake wrongly? Was he not wrong in his approach rather than in what he did? It is even so with those who know the holy books from end to end but handle them wrongly." Yahusha said, "Be humble in your knowledge and not puffed up, but beware the snare of false humility." One said to him, "Master, what is false humility?" Yahusha said, "A man was once told that if he could learn humility, he would become perfect, and desiring perfection in himself above all else, he diligently studied everything relating to humility. Then there was nothing about it he did not know. However, one day a man said to him, 'What has your humility gained for you? Where have you benefited?' To which the supposedly humble man replied, 'Stupid one, what is the matter with you? For can you not see that, having learned humility, I am now a perfect man?' About this time, Yahusha came upon two disciples arguing as to which of his teachings should be retained in their hearts. Yahusha said, "Your argument can be likened to two wives, one old and one young. The old one kept pulling out the dark hairs on her husband's head, while the young one kept pulling out the white hairs. So he became bald, having no hair at all. Then both women said, 'Behold, we have a bald-headed husband.'" One day, a disciple who had been to buy provisions returned, saying, "I took down a diligently prepared book of sayings, delightful to the ear, but men took it from me and tore it apart. Surely the wrath of Yahuwah will strike them." Hearing this, Yahusha called the man to him and said, "A girl once diligently collected colorful seeds and threaded them into a necklace. But when she put it on, a youth came along and pulled it, scattering the carefully gathered seeds. She ran to her father, expecting him to chase the youth and chastise him, but the father did nothing. Later that evening he gave her a beautiful necklace of rare gems which he had bought earlier, intending to surprise her. Then she knew why he had not bothered with the youth or been concerned about the necklace of seeds. Yahusha said to those about him, "Many things befall you and life is difficult, but so life is meant to be. Only timber well seasoned is fit for the carver's hand." A carpenter once sent his two sons to the forest to cut timber, and they came upon a mighty tree, one without branches, going straight up, with sound, well-grained wood. One son said, "This tree is too big, the task of cutting it too difficult. Let us find another which is easier to deal with." The other said, "No, let us take only the best." But the first one goes further into the forest and comes upon a tree partly rotten and soft. Now he with the rotten timber returns first, while the other comes 2 days later. If the carpenter be wise, he rejects the timber brought in first and chastises his son, rewarding the other when he returns. But if the carpenter be pleased with the first son's early return, accepting the timber and building with it, placing it as a beam support so the upright post breaks and the beam falls, killing a man, how shall the blame be apportioned? The easy way is rarely the best. Yahusha said, "Fear not the hostility of men, nor the wiles of the world. Rise above your conditions. Be like the water lily which rises out of the mud, up through the murky waters into the sunlight above." Strive always to rise above your circumstances, for in striving you gain strength. The man whose path through life has been easy is never as good as one whose path has been difficult. Life has two purposes only, to test and teach, and for that, earth is perfect. Regard each other as brothers, cherishing in sickness and supporting in trouble. Never praise yourself, and if you have virtues, let others discover them. Be careful with whom you associate, for if a man enters a tannery, though he carry nothing away, a bad smell will accompany him. No man is so important that he is above the need to work. If it becomes necessary to dress hides in the marketplace, then undertake it with a cheerful heart. Even the rich must do something, for idleness is the rust of time. Judge no man otherwise than you would wish to be judged. Once, a young woman was carried off and placed in a whorehouse in another country. Her father sent 2 men to ransom her, and when they came to the whorehouse, one remained outside while the other went in. When he who went in came out, he said to the other, "What do you think I was doing in there?" The other replied, "Why, negotiating the woman's ransom." Even so should you judge with the scales weighed down favorably. Yahusha taught his disciples thus, "All things a man possesses, his talents and his skills, are gifts bestowed by the grace of Yahuwah. The inheritance received by anyone should be regarded as something received in trust, and it is true that if they deal with it wrongfully or selfishly, payment will be required. One of the greatest of life's tests is the challenge of wealth or position, and few are those who successfully meet it. Therefore do not envy those with wealth and position unless they deal with them wisely. Otherwise pity them, for they have failed to rise above their test. A wayfarer once came to an inn and finding no one there, went into the eating hall, where he found a table set with all good things, many kinds of food and drink. So he sat down and helped himself, thinking, no one else is here, so all this must be mine, and if mine, I can do with it as I please. However, when the innkeeper returned from where he had been, the wayfarer could not escape the accounting. The rich are responsible for providing the needs of the poor, whether by work or food. This, above all, is the prime responsibility of wealth. And if a rich man says this he cannot do, then his riches witness against him. For if a poor man has a loaf of bread, he will share it with he who has none, and a beggar at the door of a poor man receives better treatment than he does at the doors of the rich, yet the rich have the most to give. And this is the sin of the wealthy. Riches of themselves are not sinful. It is what they make of men that brings them into ill repute. If they were properly regarded as something permitting the possessor to study the books of wisdom and to redress the wrongs of the poor, then they would serve a good end. Let the rich ask themselves with sincerity, am I not wealthy because of my lack of charity and the exploitation of others? Is it not because I love myself more than my neighbors? It is dangerous to be near a man without wisdom. He is like a tree with many fine branches but few roots. The winds of adversity blow and he is uprooted. Choose your friends with great care, measuring them against the words of wisdom. The man who is himself a good friend will never lack friends, but those who think they have many friends have none. The loneliest person is one living for himself alone, but it is better to be lonely than to be in bad company. Yahusha said, it is not unseemly to glory in your strength, but never become vain, for in strength you are not superior to the beasts. If the standard is to be the ability to bear a heavy burden, an ass can carry more than any of you. An elephant is mightier than a score of men, while a camel has more stamina than any man. Strength and stamina are goodly things seen in their right perspective. But they can be a heavy handicap on the path of spiritual development, particularly if they lead to arrogance and inconsideration for others. Strength, like riches and knowledge, is a goodly thing of itself if properly utilized, but for most the test is too great. Some disciples came to Yahusha and asked whether they should not withdraw into the wilderness, where they would dedicate their lives to Yahuwah. Yahusha said, of what use would my teachings be in the wilderness? Are you going to save rocks from sin or convert camels? Will you enlighten the wind or give wisdom to mirages? Where is the benefit if what you learn cannot be put into practice? Learning and good conduct must go hand in hand, and the greatest wisdom is that which teaches men to live in harmony. They who seek to escape the tests and trials of life are cowards. Are you going to withdraw from the conflict through lack of courage, standing silently by while the wicked swallow up the good? The disciples said, Master, are you bringing strife or peace? Do you prepare us for battle? Are we to rally the people? Yahusha said, do you still not understand? I am a man of peace, and I unsheathe only the sword of the Ruach. This is not the easy way, for it is less difficult to change things with the sword than with soft words, and those who oppose us understand that better. But let only those who would use weapons with courage talk about soft words and peace, otherwise better men will justifiably scorn them as cowards. Cowards talk about peace and brave men about war. But I tell you that when brave men talk peace and cowards are sent to war, there will be no more strife, and a new day will dawn. A disciple named Messiah said to Yahusha, Master, teach us how to love one another without malice or envy, with goodwill and forbearance. Yahusha said, the first step is to love yourself less, and by doing this you will find more love to give. If any say, I like being loved, that person is wrong, for rather you should say, I like loving. Do not seek to take love but to give it. Another disciple who had believed in bodily resurrection said, Master, what proof can be given that there is a life beyond the grave? Yahusha answered, There is proof to those worthy of it. But if it were a manifest certainty as a reward for a good life, how would the hypocrites and those who would do nothing without payment be discovered? If uncertainty and doubt were removed from life, then it would be of less value for its purpose. Things are as they are because so they must be. If you want proof, become worthy of it. You will not be denied it even here. But you must seek diligently. Nothing comes easily, and this least of all. Before they departed from that place, a disciple said to Yahusha, Master, now that we go to take up our burdens, tell us how to avoid wrongdoing. Yahusha said, Were you able to avoid all wrongdoing and sins, such as the known frailty of men, that I fear you would fall into another one, that of false pride? Look at the falsely pious ones who glory in their righteousness, and this is not the least of sins. Having taught in this manner and said these and many other things, Yahusha departed from that place on the mountainside and went down to carry the tidings concerning the coming rule of Elohim to the people. Chapter 5. Yahusha went with his disciples into Yehuda and taught there. At this time Yachanan of the wilderness, who heralded the coming of Yahusha, was baptizing at Ainam, not far from Salem, because there was a plentiful supply of water in that place. A great number of people came to be cleansed in the waters, for Yachanan was still free. At this time, there was much disturbance in Samaria, and many soldiers were coming and going, for a false deliverer had arisen and proclaimed himself as Yahuwah's anointed. The people were restless, and there were many rumors, but Yachanan had no dealings with any of these things. Yet some said the false deliverer was a follower of Yachanan, but this was untrue. The disciples of Yachanan came to him and said, Respected teacher, some time ago you testified concerning a man who came to you on the other side of the river. Now he has started to baptize, and his teachings gather many men to him. Yachanan said, No man can speak with authority concerning Yahuwah without his sanction, but this man I know to be a true messenger and the worthy son. They said, He also heals. Yachanan replied, No man can heal except through the power of the Ruach HaKodesh, and this man has that power. I have said I am not the Mashiach, neither am I any other whom men seek. I am the forerunner sent to herald his coming. The bride belongs to the bridegroom. But he who stands at the bridegroom's right hand to support him is pleased when he hears the words spoken by the bridegroom. That pleasure is now mine, but not for long, for as my star declines, so his waxes brighter. Yachanan feared no man and condemned hypocrisy and indifference to the Torah wherever he found it. He was the rod of the poor and unlearned, and a staff to the weak and oppressed. He was incorruptible and spoke forthrightly, never hiding anything within his heart, and condemned wrongdoing wherever it occurred. Now Yachanan baptized with water, and because of this the priests were against him, but on this matter they could do nothing. However, Yachanan had condemned the actions of Herod, who had sinned against his blood and the Torah, and because of this the people murmured against Herod. Therefore, as these were restless times and the people were in a mood for revolt, he had Yachanan taken and imprisoned. For had there been a rising against Herod at this time, Rome could not have come to his aid. Yachanan was imprisoned in a fortress, and this pleased Herodias, for she had long borne ill will towards him. Though Herod had no lawful right to take his brother's wife, the fault was not his alone. Herodias wished with all her heart to rid herself of the condemnations of Yochanan, but could not accomplish this because Herod held Yochanan in awe. For he was a truly holy man, much beloved by the people. Though Yochanan was kept in confinement, Herod often spoke with him and listened to his words. But though they stirred the heart of Herod, he found them difficult to understand. While in prison, doubt stirred in the heart of Yochanan, and he sent disciples to Yahusha, inquiring whether he felt he was truly Yahuwah's anointed, for at this time there was much confusion on the matters. When the disciples returned, their reply puzzled Yochanan, for they reported Yahusha as saying, "I am not he whom you expected or the deliverer of these people, but the deliverer of all men. Nevertheless, if only another will change the hearts of the people, I shall not be found wanting." But Yochanan received wisdom and knew he had not erred. Now a certain feast day came, and Herod entertained his officials and the leading men of Galilee. And during the course of the entertainment, his daughter danced for the guests. She so charmed and delighted them that Herod, while under the influence of wine and the urgings of others, being also full of pride at their applause, swore to grant her any boon whatever it entailed. The girl withdrew to consult her mother, who told her to request the head of Yochanan. Though the request greatly upset Herod and sobered him because he realized the extent of his folly, he himself could not break an oath of this sort made in the presence of his guests. The oath sworn was a kingly one, but Herod was not a king. Therefore he put it to one of the guests, a learned man, as to whether anything he wished to do would have force within the Torah, or whether he could only be bound by an oath made within the Torah. The man replied that even kings were bound by the Torah, and though Herod was less than a king, he had sworn a kingly oath which, if broken, would confirm his lack of kingly authority. However, he said that Yochanan, being a lawbreaker, could not be protected by the Torah. And so the oath made by Herod stood. So on the morrow the head of Yochanan was struck off and displayed at the gate. So it was that Yochanan was put to death because Herod feared his influence over the people, for he declared the coming of a new kingdom, and Herod feared the day of deliverance. Yochanan had said, "I have been sent with many powers. I am with you to point out the way of the Torah. I herald the deliverer and the rule of Elohim." Yochanan had taught his disciples to pray in this manner, "Holy be the name of Yahuwah in the places he created to serve his will. Let the coming of the new kingdom under the rule of Elohim not be delayed beyond our days but come in the time which is at hand." When the followers of Yochanan heard what had happened, they took charge of the body of Yochanan and laid it in a tomb by the river. There was a loud outcry from the people who said, "Why should our prophets be treated in this manner? Where is the deliverer?" Later, when Yahusha returned to the river, he found 2 followers of Yochanan and took them to a place of safety. Chapter 6. Before going out among the people to declare himself, Yahusha returned to Gennesareth, the town of his upbringing, accompanied by his disciples. He went first to the place where his mother was staying, and though she greeted him warmly because she loved her eldest son, Miriam did not fully understand Yahusha. She always knew he would grow up to be different and would become a man of Elohim because, when carrying him, she dreamed that a bright flaming star had come down from heaven and entered her womb. His own kinsmen had once thought him mad and sought to take control of him. But now, his brothers and sisters having grown up, they no longer troubled him. They had said, "He has lost his father and seeks another. For is it not written, 'I will be his father, and he will be my son'?" When younger, Yahusha had been overawed by the prospects of the future, and often fearful that he might not fulfill the promise. But he overcame this and any fears of his inability. It is in this and his dedication that his greatness was revealed. Though Yahusha wielded the Ruach HaKodesh of Yahuwah, and in him it was stored up as in a water tank, he still had to overcome the weaknesses of men. For without so doing, his greatness could not be made manifest. Those who say he was something other than man detract from his greatness, for then the things he had to do would have been easier to accomplish. Perhaps they cannot comprehend the heights to which men can rise when inspired by Yahuwah, the Father of all men. Going into the temple, Yahusha stood up to read as he had often done in holy days. He read out a passage from the scroll of a prophet to the Yahudim, called Yeshayahu in the tongue of his fathers, and having done so, returned it to the scroll keeper and sat down. After others had performed their duties, Yahusha had a chance to speak. And with all eyes upon him he did so, and the people were astonished. For he said, "Behold, you are witnessing the fulfillment of the Holy Writ, and the accomplishment of Yahuwah's design. I am chosen to be the tongue of the Father, speaking his words to you, his people. I am the light shining in the midst of darkness. And even as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats, so do I come to show how the good are to be separated from the wicked." Yahusha spoke with knowledgeable authority, bringing a new message which gladdened the hearts of those who heard him. The people marveled and whispered among themselves, "Where has he gained all this knowledge? How has he become so learned? Is this not the son of Yosef, the carpenter, who is now dead, and of Miriam? And do not his sisters live here still? Yet they say he has healed the incurable." But not all received his words in this manner, and many were offended. Noticing the murmuring among these, Yahusha addressed them, saying, "Do you hold it against me that I left? If a man has two duties, he must make a choice, not following the inclinations of his heart, but the course indicated by higher decree. No doubt you have heard about the things I have done elsewhere and will say, 'Let us see you do the same here.' To this I can answer with sincerity, a prophet is unacceptable in his own neighborhood, and a physician is not called to cure those who know him. When I come in friendship and compassion to those who need my help, they say, 'Physician, heal yourself first,' thinking me mad. Why now should I be called upon to do things Eliyahu and Elisha could not do? The only ones they cured were Syrians." Yahusha did not heal many here, and he said, "I heal in accord with the Torah and not against it." After hearing what he said in the temple, many people were vexed with him and sought to hustle him out of town. But others said, "Let him be, for he grew up here and is only the son of a carpenter. Therefore he tries to make himself important. He has been away and seeks to impress us." Being so poorly received in the town where he had been brought up, Yahusha went out around the villages. Choosing 12 apostles from among his disciples, he sent them away in pairs to deal with many things caused by the intrusion of evil. He said to them, "Carry a staff, but take no food, no money, and no change of clothing. When you are invited to a house, stay there until you leave the village, but never tarry where you are not welcome." Yahusha said, "Many will fail to grasp your meanings or will interpret your words wrongly. Do not dispute with them, but put things right with patience. Never disregard a questioner or abuse him, lest others think you have no answer. All can only grasp what you say according to their understanding, therefore speak plainly and to their hearts." Yahusha himself went about proclaiming the advent of the rule of Elohim, and he also cured many kinds of sickness. Then people began to say, "This man is great and good even among those dedicated to the service of Elohim." And many heeded his teaching and led a new life. Now many people believed there would be two kinds of deliverers, and a man named Yosef Baraban had many followers. Yahusha met him at a house in Bethgal and said, "Why do you declare things which stir up the people?" To which the other replied, "What concern is it of yours?" Yahusha answered him after this manner, "Several men were sitting in a boat, and one began boring a hole beneath his seat. Seeing this, his companions said, "What are you doing here?" He answered, "What concern is it of yours what I do beneath my own seat?" And they replied, "Surely it is our affair when what you do will swamp the boat, and we will all be thrown into the water." Yahusha moved to another place and a crowd gathered around him. And while he was speaking, one of his first followers tried to push through to him. Now this man was deformed and ugly, his eyes squinted, and he was ungainly. But he walked in the light of truth. The crowd jostled him, shouting, "Look at the ugly man, push him back or he will scare the teacher away." Then Yahusha stepped down from where he stood and, pushing through to the man, put an arm around his shoulders, greeting him affectionately. Yahusha said to the people, "Why mock someone in whom the light of goodness shines? What matters the appearance of the body when the ruach within is bright? None among you has a ruach such as this man's, beautifully glowing with goodness. This I say to you, the body is of little importance, for it perishes at its hour, but the ruach never dies. Why do you treasure that which you can keep but a short while? For soon it will be cast off like a worn-out tunic. Surely it is better to treasure more lasting things. The shell of a pearl is ugly and rough, but men do not seek it out for itself, wanting only what it contains, and this becomes the cherished treasure of a beautiful woman. Never heed the external ugliness, seek for the beauty within." In the crowd there was a man who employed many others, and he said, "Master, I am so stirred up by your words that I will give up everything I have and follow you." Yahusha said, "How many look to you for food and employment?" The man replied, "My children are numerous and I have many servants, and there is my father who is old." Yahusha said, "The lives of no two men are alike, and all require the labors of many to support them. Even the greatest teachings cannot satisfy empty stomachs. Therefore, return to the place of your appointed labors and remain constant in your responsibilities. Give all you make over your modest requirements to Yahuwah and study the holy books daily." Yahusha said, "A man without the light places his faith in gold, burying it in the ground so it will support him in adversity. Yet what benefit does it bestow if he never needs it? He worries continually and must be constantly on guard, lest he be robbed. And when he dies, his inheritors spend it. Yet by charitable deeds and self-restraint, a greater treasure which cannot be taken by robbers or dissipated by others can be laid up openly and without fear." Someone in the crowd said, "Great teacher, to some you say, 'Give up all,' while others you tell to continue in their ways. I have many responsibilities and a moderate surplus over my requirements. What should I do?" Yahusha said, "Do what is right and just. Study the books of wisdom, and live according to their teachings. Exploit no one and work for the rule of Elohim." A man said to Yahusha, "Master, I know the problems of the rich, for I have sons and many friends. But how can I know whether they love me or my wealth?" Yahusha said, "A rich man owned a large warehouse, but one night this burned down, consuming all his wealth. And though he had given other warehouses to each of his 2 sons, when he lost his own, they would not help him. While poor, he met a beggar boy whom he adopted to fill the empty places in his heart. And, going to a distant city by hard work, he established another warehouse, becoming rich again. When the adopted boy grew up, the man gave him a warehouse, but one much smaller than those he had previously given to his sons. The 2 sons heard about their father's new wealth and sent word that they wanted to combine their warehouses with his, so that by trading together they could all get richer. The man then sent messengers to all 3 of those he had helped, saying his business had declined, and he was in the hands of moneylenders and required 100 pieces of gold to continue. The 2 sons returned excuses, saying they could not help, But the adopted son sent 200 pieces of gold, saying he had pledged himself to obtain it. Thus the man found out who loved him and left all his estate to the one he had adopted. Speaking to the people about him, Yahusha said, "So long as the great sun never shone upon earth, there was darkness, and had it not come to shine, there would be darkness still. Without the sun, men would not have known day from night, but when it came, both were made distinguishable. These times are a night of ignorance, wherein wrongdoing and bewilderment prevail. But a light has come to dispel the darkness and make right distinguishable from wrong." After these things had been done and said, it was the time of a festival of the Yahudim, and Yahusha returned to where there was a place of assembly. On the way he passed through the market where sheep were sold, beside which was a salt pool having a covered entrance to shelter the sick and maimed. A man was lying nearby, and Yahusha said to him, "How long have you been here?" The man replied, "I have been here a long time, having no one to put me into the water at the proper times." Yahusha took pity on the man and taking him by the hand raised him up, saying, "You are cured. Arise, take your bed and depart." This happened on the Shabbat, and when some pious Yahudim saw the man carrying a burden, they rebuked him. But he answered, "The healer who came and cured me said I should take up my bed, so where am I in the wrong?" The pious Yahudim inquired regarding the healer, but the man said he did not know him, having never seen him before. Later, when the man who had been cured saw Yahusha outside the place of assembly, he learned his name and told the Yahudim. Before this, the pious ones who were separated out from the people had ignored Yahusha, but now, because he did such things on the Shabbat, they turned against him. For Yahusha said, "If my Father does not rest, why should I?" They thought he claimed closer kinship with Elohim than ordinary men, but he meant to show that all men are brothers. The next day, when Yahusha commenced speaking to the people, many sought to do him harm. And he said, "You have the teachings of the Torah and the prophets. Why do you seek to do me harm?" Then they shouted back at him, "Because you are possessed by demons. You tell us we are wrong, but we are content with our ways. Leave us to go our way, and you go yours." After this, Yahusha went away because of the hostility towards him. But when it came close to harvesting time, his brothers sent a messenger saying, "Come back now. The people are busy at work. Let your followers here see for themselves the things you do. For if your message is important, the bearer should not remain hidden." On his way back, Yahusha and the disciples with him passed through Samaria, where there was a place called Jacob's well, 5 furlongs from Shechem. The sun being at its height, they decided to rest there. After refreshing themselves, the disciples went into the town to buy food, leaving Yahusha reclining not far from the well. Now, while Yahusha rested there, a Samaritan woman came to draw water. And Yahusha, not having a vessel, asked her for a drink. This surprised the woman, for the Yahudim regarded anything handled by the Samaritans as being defiled. She said, "How can you ask this of me?" Yahusha replied, "If you knew what Elohim gives through me, you would have requested a drink from the waters of life." The woman said, "What is this water of life? Surely it cannot bestow greater benefit than this well, the gift of our forefather, which provided water for him, his household and his flocks." Yahusha said, "This water, originating on earth, can satisfy only body, and the drinker will thirst again. But the water I can provide, springing from an eternal source, satisfies any who drink. So they need never thirst again for things not of this world, and it grants everlasting life and glory." The woman said to Yahusha, "Let me have this water you talk about, so I am freed from the necessity for drawing water." Yahusha said, "It would be best if you went and brought your husband, for two may understand better than one. She answered, But I have no husband. Yahusha said, In this you have at any rate spoken true, for though married 5 times, you now live with one who is not your husband. The Samaritan woman said to Yahusha, Master, I can see you are one of those special people who know all things. Now tell me, is it true what your people tell us, that we should worship in the temple at Jerusalem to reach the ear of Elohim, for he is only there and not on Mount Gerizim? Yahusha told her, Be assured, the time is coming when the place of worship is unimportant. For though your people worship without understanding the nature of worship, while the Yahudim worship with this knowledge, neither know the true nature of worship. The time is coming when all who understand the nature of worship will do so in Ruach and in the light of truth. For Yahuwah is the greatest of Ruachath, and his worshippers must therefore bring something of the Ruach. This, and labor in his service, is the only acceptable kind of worship. The smoke of flesh and fowl are not acceptable offerings. The woman heard without understanding, but one with Yahusha stored these things in his heart. The woman said, Someday an enlightener will come and explain these things to us. Yahusha replied, My words may have come from the enlightener himself. The woman said, I must go, for you frighten me. Just as she was preparing to go, the disciples returned and were surprised to find Yahusha had been talking to a Samaritan woman in this manner, but they said nothing. Leaving her pitcher, the woman hastened away to spread word around that there was a man out at Jacob's well who could read the past and might be the enlightener, for the Samaritans did not await the deliverer as did the Yahudim. When the woman had gone, the disciples showed the things they had brought to Yahusha. But he was disinclined to eat, saying to them, Doing the will of Yahuwah sustains me, and the inflowing power of his Ruach quenches my thirst. One of the disciples said, It is well to eat now, for the harvest is ripening over there, and the harvesters need strength. Yahusha said, The reapers cannot expect their pay until the crop is gathered into the storehouse. Let us wait to measure the fruits of our labor before celebrating. Is it not written, Where one man sows, another reaps? You will be reapers in fields sown by others. Many have toiled in the preparation of the ground and have sown good seed. You must be no less diligent in reaping the harvest, gathering it in carefully so not a grain is lost. The one who had remained with Yahusha said, Master, I am puzzled. This woman had many husbands. Tell us which one will be her husband in heaven. Yahusha said, In heaven there is neither marriage nor giving in marriage, for there the promises of marriage are fulfilled. To one she must incline more than towards the others, and if he inclines likewise there is union of the Ruach. But unions of the Ruach may be either weak or strong. Another disciple said, What of he who is not her husband? Yahusha answered him, Marriage is not of the flesh nor made by the words of men. It is of the Ruach, and they who are joined in Ruach and flesh in the sight of Yah. Who let no man seek to lightly put apart. A marriage wholly of the flesh is fornication, though it be blessed by many priests. Yet marriage is the measure of value. A thing possessed by many is of little consequence. The worth of a coin lacking inscription is unestablished, and the possessor carries it without faith, doubting its ability to buy bread. A woman may be reserved for marriage or give herself freely for love. She knows her own worth best. But if she gives herself to several, then it is not love, but fornication. A union is blessed before a priest and sanctified in the eyes of the people. But I tell you, unless the bond is forged on the anvil of adversity and wrought under the hammers of stress and struggle, it is a thing of little spiritual substance. Love is not like the thistle seed, blown this way or that according to the prevailing winds of desire and inclination. It is not the offspring of flesh but the progeny of the Ruach. It can be proven and established only under difficulties and tribulations, and it is because of the known frailties of men under trial and test that marriage has been ordained to enshrine it. Now, after these things were said, many Samaritans came and heard the words of Yahusha and invited him to stay among them. And he remained 3 days. Chapter 7. Yahusha then went by boat, and where he landed there was a man who lived in a deserted tomb, because he was tormented by an intrusion from the kingdom of dark Ruachath. Attempts had been made to confine him in fetters, but because of the strength unnaturally given, he easily escaped. Day and night he would shriek among the tombs and upon the hillside, terrifying people and often injuring himself by falling. Yahusha knew the nature of the tormenting thing and called upon the power within him, so it entered the body of the possessed man, wrestling with the evil thing inside him. Then the man ran screaming among a herd of swine, and 2 fell into a ravine, but shortly the man became calm, for the evil intruder had departed from him. The swineherds ran away to carry the tale of these events to people round about who came to see for themselves what had happened. When they saw the madman was rational, they became afraid and asked Yahusha to go away. When Yahusha was preparing to depart, the man who had been cured begged to go along with him. But Yahusha said, "No, you remain here and bear witness for me." The man spread the tale of what had been done for him through all the free cities, for he received much silver in the marketplaces. Coming close to another town on the seashore where a crowd was gathered to hear him, Yahusha saw Mattatyahu seated where dues were collected, and he said unto him, "Are you ready to follow me?" For he had spoken with Mattatyahu before. Mattatyahu replied, "I am ready, but first come and eat with me." When Yahusha arrived at Mattatyahu's house, he found other tax-gatherers had assembled there, with many others who did not observe the Torah of Moshe which are in the holy books of the Yahudim. While eating, Yahusha said, "No man of himself can know right from wrong. For what is right in one man's eyes may be wrong in another's, therefore strife arises among them. Only when men accept a single standard of judgment and abide by it can there be peace. When men live together without the light of the Torah, they are like a house built with unmortared bricks, or like men trying to tow a boat but all pulling in different directions. There are 2 laws, the law of men and the Torah of the Father who is in heaven. When I speak of the Torah, I do not mean the law of men. I am the light illuminating Yahuwah's Torah, so men see it more clearly, and though I fulfill the Torah, I do not change it. Never say this is right, or that is wrong, but only this is right or wrong according to the Torah and in the light of Yahusha. I bring new oil for the lamp of the Torah, for that within it is now impure, and the light produces too much obscuring smoke. For I am the Son of Man and bear the sufferings of men, coming to fulfill their hopes even as it has been foretold. Is it not said among the Jesseneth that the Son of Man is the perfected man who will set the standard for those who wish to be true sons of Elohim? Later, when Yahusha went outside, he found some Parashim standing apart as was their custom, and one put the question to Yahusha, "How can you claim to be a teacher, interpreting the Torah of Elohim, when you associate with tax-gatherers and lawbreakers?" Yahusha replied, "It is not the healthy who need the attentions of a physician, but those who are ill. It is the tree growing out of the sand which requires watering, not the one growing by the river. I come to minister to the spiritually sick, not to the righteous who have their consolation." A man in the crowd said, "This is a day of fasting kept by all who are truly religious. Yet here are you and your disciples eating and drinking." Yahusha said, Is it usual for attendants at the bridal shower to deprive themselves of pleasure while the bridegroom is with them? Soon he will depart, and that is the time for hearts to be heavy. A heart weighed down without cause is an unnecessary burden, adding neither joy nor benefit to the lives of men. Fasting is good, but when it becomes a routine religious rite, it is no more than a purposeless vexation. A soldier in the crowd asked Yahusha, "Do you uphold the teachings of Yachanan of the wilderness? For there was a man I can understand." Yahusha replied, "Yachanan sent men to me inquiring whether I was the promised one or should they look for another. I said, Go back and inform Yachanan of all the things you have heard and seen here, and how the poor are learning about the coming of the rule of Elohim and the disinherited told when justice will reign." People went out into the wilderness expecting to find a great man, but what had they in mind? A man speaking like the prophets of old or a nobleman clad in garments of fine linen? Yachanan dressed in a manner fit for the place and purpose, and he spoke in accordance with the message he had to convey. He was the man of whom the holy books speak, a voice of one crying in the wilderness, preparing the path for one who follows. I tell you with all sincerity, no mother ever gave birth to a better man than Yachanan, yet when the rule of Elohim comes, everyone living will have to exceed him. Ever since Yachanan declared these things he was harried with violence, even though all the prophets before him foretold present events. He spoke with the voice of Eliyahu, and if any of you have the understanding, you will know what I mean. Concerning this generation which is wrapped up within itself and blind to all going on about it, there is little to say. It is like children at play calling out to one another, "We play the pipes, but you refuse to dance. We raise a lament, but you will not mourn." Like all good men, Yachanan was misunderstood, for few knew the measure of greatness. He lived simply, neither eating nor drinking to excess. And because of his way of life, men called him crazy. The servant of man comes along and goes among the people, eating and drinking with them, and he is accused of gluttony, loose living and drunkenness. What must a man do to prove himself in the eyes of the people? Whatever he does is wrong. One of the Parashim who was nearby said to Yahusha, "We understand your meaning, but where do you stand in relation to the Torah? Have you come to take it away or declare it obsolete?" Yahusha replied, "No one patches an old cloak with new fabric, for this shows up its age without strengthening it. Likewise, no sensible person puts new wine into old wineskins, for this causes them to split, the wine pouring out so neither the wine nor the wineskins have any value. Is it not much wiser to put new wine into new wineskins? I have come to place something beside that which is already there, to hold a mirror to the Torah and to man, so both may be seen with greater clarity." A poor man standing nearby said, "What use is the wisdom of the holy books? Will it provide our bread?" Yahusha replied, "What use is a lamp at night? Will its light appease hunger? Is it worthless because it cannot do so? Each thing has its appointed use. The foot should not be called upon to do the work of the arm, nor the ear the work of the eyes. A carpenter does not do the work of a potter, nor does a weaver make plows. A pupil may not be a good teacher, nor a servant a good master. Each must seek only to excel in the position he has, and not to be better than others at their own task. Whoever supports me, that person will I support, and I will strive with those who are against me. I have not come to bring peace but to put a sword into the hands of men, setting sons against their fathers and daughters against their mothers. For nothing is worthy if a man will not fight for it. Anyone following me will find enemies among his own kindred, and though he loves his parents above all else, I will give him a cause which is greater. My burden is not light and must be shouldered with fortitude and courage. those finding it too heavy must go elsewhere. The man who seeks to preserve his life through cowardice will be deprived of its benefits, and he who is prepared to make sacrifices for the cause of man will surely gain the crown of life. Whoever receives a good and just man openly, giving him his due, shall in turn be given the reward of his merit. But those who expect to receive rewards bestowable only by one greater than a prophet will be disappointed. It was after this that Yahusha said to his disciples, "When the task is difficult, a man seeks consolation from his Father. A man may be lonely among many, but no one need be lonely in the Ruach, for this is never shut off from communication with a source of comfort." Then Yahusha prayed, "O Father above heaven and earth, your Son submits to your will. And if things declared in your name remain mysteries to the learned but are revelations to the simple-hearted, you know best, my Father. You have placed a great responsibility on your Son, but few heed him. The Father's words, spoken through the mouth of his Son, are not highly regarded." Later, at another place, Yahusha said to the people gathered there, "Follow me, all those who are overburdened and weary, and I will help you. Take the yoke of my cause upon you, and learn from me, for this will ease and not add to your load. I am understanding and compassionate, not expecting anyone to bear a load too heavy for them. The heavy laden shall know the light and be moved from the darkness, but they who cast aside their burden and go astray are lost forever in darkness. Life loads each according to his capacity, and no two bear a similar burden." At this time, Yahusha always kept some disciples with him when he walked about, and one Shabbat he and two of them were following a small pathway leading past uncut corn ripening in the husk. The disciples plucked a handful, for the Torah permitted them to do this, providing they did not enter the field or take any away, and rubbing the ears between their fingers ate the grains. 3 Parashim were passing by, and they rebuked the disciples and said to Yahusha, "Why do you allow your followers to do things not permitted on the Shabbat?" Yahusha answered, "Does the deed affect the day? Have you not read that, when driven by hunger, David went into the house of Yahuwah and took the sanctified loaves to eat, sharing them with his men? Though these loaves were reserved for priestly fare, did he not justify himself by saying all produced by the earth were for the use of men? Surely the Shabbat was made for the sake of man, and not man for the sake of the Shabbat. As man bows to the needs of life, so the Shabbat must bow to the needs of men." Towards evening, as they returned, Yahusha saw a man working in the fields and said to him, "If your labors are dedicated to the service of Elohim, you are blessed, but if it is otherwise, you are a lawbreaker." The disciples, hearing this, said, "Master, is there so much difference between the things of the morning and the things of the evening?" Yahusha said, "The same difference as between an empty stomach and a full one. The same thing may be forgiven one man but not another." On another Shabbat, Yahusha came out of the temple to be accosted by a man with a paralyzed arm who said, "Master, I am a mason who can no longer be useful and must humiliate myself by begging for food to feed my family. Let me become a whole man again, not for my sake but for the sake of those depending upon me." Nearby stood some self-righteous members of the congregation who watched closely to see what Yahusha would do. But he, knowing their thoughts, called them over and said, "Let me know your views concerning the keeping of the Shabbat. Should good be done when it would be uncharitable to leave it undone?" They said, "We abide by the Torah as it is interpreted for us by those knowing better than we." Yahusha became angry and was hurt in his heart, for their hard-heartedness and wrongful interpretation of the Torah were indications of their spiritual apathy. So he healed the man's arm. The self-righteous see no wrong in themselves, only in others, and they interpret all things to accord with their own convenience. Then the self-righteous ones left, plotting among themselves, and they decided to become supporters of Herod, who was against Yahusha. They said, Let us set a trap for this troublemaker who condemns our ways. He reproaches us for wrongdoing when we simply obey the Torah, and accuses us of things which he declares to be sinful, but which are not more than natural weaknesses of men. He proclaims himself to be the mouthpiece of Elohim, so let us test him and see. Let us find out whether he speaks true or false. We will send men to beat him up, and see then whether Elohim comes to his aid. Let other men abuse him and hurl insults at him, heaping every kind of indignity upon him, treating him roughly to test his gentleness. We will heckle him and cause commotion whenever he speaks and see whether he abides by his own teachings under provocation. They laid their plans. However, there were others who came to Yahusha and asked him how they would recognize the deliverer when he appeared among them. Yahusha said, "Is it not written? He will judge the disinherited and lowly who trust in him. He will smite the earth with the rod of his tongue and destroy wickedness. He will be girdled with integrity and belted with trustworthiness." Then some said, "Surely this man is Yahuwah's anointed." Someone said, "Master, how do we know the deliverer will come to us?" Yahusha said, "Is it not written? He will come to the worthy and just, but to the people he will be like a winnowing fan, ensuring only the best are gathered in?" It is also said, "He will bless those who follow him with wisdom and gladness." He will be sinless, gathering together a dedicated people whom he will lead in righteousness as an example to all nations. They will cast out the ungodly from their midst. Those born in the days of the deliverer will witness the things he will do for the generations which follow. Is it not also written, "The words of his mouth will smite the earth forever, and for the chosen among men, there will be a guiding light for the rest of their days"?